إني ألقى الإناس في صومي وصلاتي ودعائي للرحمن وجميع الطاعات.
How'd you like my new intro? I might actually start using it for, satire. No, I'm only joking. As you can see though, I do have a new avatar made by someone who enjoys my content and is very talented, obviously. If you like the design, I encourage you to check out Abel's website that's linked in the description. And I hope that those familiar with my channel will agree that I do my best to be creative in terms of how I put together my videos, but I've never been artistically gifted in this way. I genuinely couldn't do what this chap's done, so big shout out for the effort. We have to stop being nice now though, because it's time for me to introduce you all to Mohammed Hijab. He is a Muslim, spoilers, a YouTube personality, a serious thinker, author of classics such as Should Muslim Women Be Trapped at Home? And The Academic Problems with Darwinian Evolution. He's challenging atheists, liberals, has a real problem with freedom of speech.
And he had one thing you haven't got.
What's that, sir?
A great big bushy beard. Come on, let's have a mosey around.
So what do you think now when people say, okay, well, this is freedom of speech? Well, there's no such thing as now, this hate speech. It's freedom of speech. You trying to limit our speech, brother?
Well, we usually say it a little more elegantly than that, but yes, I defend the right of anyone to criticize the beliefs and actions of Muslims under the principle of free expression, correct?
The truth is, on a social level, liberalism is, as J.S. Mill said, the ability to do whatever you want so long as so you don't harm anyone else. This is called the harm principle. Yeah, so you can do whatever you want so long as you don't harm anyone else. What is harm? Because if we're talking about philosophical liberalism, then when we're talking about freedom of speech, we have to kind of tether freedom of speech. We have to refine this concept of freedom of speech. We have to qualify it with this harm principle. Otherwise, you'd have what you'd call utilitarianism, which is what Jeremy Bentham believed in, which is the greatest amount of good for the greatest number of people, which is what J.S. Mill refined. So the point is...
Yeah, while we're young, please, mate. Maybe if you paid a little less attention to your nose and more to your brain, we'd get there sooner.
Disgusting.
Have Manson's doppelganger over there pass you a Kleenex or something. It's gross.
This idea of liberalism is actually refined by J.S. Mill with this harm principle. What is harm? One could argue that, for example, using the N-word is harm. It's harmful. That's why we don't do it. Even if some comedian felt it funny to use the N-word, some white comedian felt it funny to use the N-word, most people in society would say, well, look at the historical timeline. Look at what we've done to black people. And now you're trying to humiliate black people with something you know is going to aggravate them. So they're not going to accept the N-word. It's socially unacceptable. Really and truly, the parameters of freedom of speech are defined socially or socially constructed. What we're saying is that if there's a significant number of Muslim people that are offended with certain things, like for example, he keeps mentioning the drawing of cartoons. If they're offended by that, if they find that harmful, right? If you're saying that that doesn't matter, then I would argue that you're going against the harm principle.
Sure, but John Stuart Mill wouldn't. And seeing as how it's his fucking principle, I think he gets a say. Have you ever taken your earphones out of your pocket and found them all knotted and twisted to hell? That's this man's brain right now. How likely is it? I mean, just think about this for a second. On Liberty by John Stuart Mill is arguably the boldest and most articulate defence of freedom of speech ever written. A founding document of liberalism where the author makes it crystal clear.
If all mankind minus one were of one opinion, and only one person were of the contrary opinion, mankind would be no more justified in silencing that one person than he, if he had the power, would be justified in silencing mankind.
The entire point of the essay is to say that freedom of speech is the most important freedom we have. It produces civilization by allowing us to challenge authority, attain wisdom, and follow our conscience. So, based on all that, and with the knowledge that Mill indeed conceded that speech in violation of his harm principle could be restricted, do you think that an example of such a violation would be drawing a cartoon someone doesn't like? Do you honestly think that's what was meant by it?
What we're saying is that if there's a significant number of Muslim people that are offended with certain things, like for example, he keeps mentioning the drawing of cartoons. If they're offended by that, if they find that harmful, right? If you're saying that that doesn't matter, then I would argue that you're going against the harm principle. Because you're defining harm as the only harm that matters is the harm that I define that matters.
No, that's literally what you're doing. The harm principle, as liberals have always defined it, can in no way be taken to mean that which offends someone. In chapter 4, the matter is settled.
There are many who consider as an injury to themselves any conduct which they have a distaste for, and resent it as an outrage to their feelings. As a religious bigot, when charged with disregarding the religious feelings of others, has been known to retort that they disregard his feelings by persisting in their abominable worship or creed. But there is no parity between the feeling of a person for his own opinion and the feeling of another who is offended at his holding it, no more than between the desire of a thief to take a purse and the desire of the right owner to keep it. And a person's taste is as much his own peculiar concern as his opinion or his purse.
Mill likens your position to purse snatching. He's saying that you're employing very devious tactics, morally akin to trying to steal a person's property because you believe you're entitled to it. That's a pretty fierce condemnation of the manure you were just spreading about. The harm principle is only invoked to describe speech that can be limited legally, and harm is taken to mean that which violates the rights of another person. You have no right not to be offended. I'm sorry, but if we had that right, every fucker would be in jail. How many of us are offended by rap music, for example, the Da Vinci Code, or Piers Morgan's career?
How dare you?
You can't claim injury as a result of the existence of those things. That's utterly retarded. You might not like them. Too bad. We do. And we're not going to follow your 7th century blasphemy laws. So mind your own fucking business.
Because you're defining harm as the only harm that matters is the harm that I define that matters. So you wouldn't say the N-word. You wouldn't say certain things about Jewish people. You wouldn't make Holocaust jokes. Would Joe Rogan ever make Holocaust jokes? No. Even he's a comedian. He was a stand-up comedian. Would he ever dare make Holocaust jokes? No, because he knows it's going to offend a segment.
Challenge him.
Yeah.
If he's really about freedom of speech.
If you believe in absolute freedom of speech, and Reza, this other guy that he had on the show, he also said he believes in absolute freedom of speech. I challenge you to make a few jokes about the Holocaust.
They say there's safety in numbers. Yeah? Tell that to 6 million Jews. Really, London? Really? A round of applause?
A few jokes about the N-word.
There is absolutely nothing wrong with the word nigger in and of itself.
Nigger, 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 by the way.
There's a nigger. I'm a house nigger.
Nigger.
Nigger. They're niggers!
A few jokes about other communities. Homosexuals. Make a few jokes about homosexuals. Say something about homosexuals.
I've been in that lamp so long, I'm bent out of all recognition.
So you know you're not going to do that because actually society has defined for you what is appropriate freedom of speech and what is inappropriate freedom of speech.
I don't know what bothers me more about this guy, the stupidity or the bad faith in which he argues. I mean, which thread of this yarn of bullshit do we tug at first? He started out by claiming that publishing cartoons of his profit is a violation of the harm principle and consequently an illiberal thing to do. Utter rubbish. The harm principle is concerned only with the violation of rights, and feeling offended doesn't constitute that. Zero understanding of Mill, bollockses it up completely. Then we had social pressure dictates that you don't make jokes about gays or Jews. I've already demonstrated with the skits I played that's actually false. Jokes are occasionally made around very taboo topics. That's the whole purpose of comedy. Only radical PC SJW types don't understand this, and everybody hates them for it. Furthermore, I cannot stomach the blind narcissism that maintains we should be as sensitive to the feelings of Muslims as we often are to groups that have been dealt a bad hand historically. Get fucked. We don't owe you anything. Islam is a gigantic global superpower that has been oppressing people since its inception. You know the reason people are criticizing and mocking you? It's because your culture represents a skid mark on the underpants of humanity. Your doctrines are ignorant, backwards, murderous, and produce nothing but beggary, bankruptcy, and misery wherever they're implemented. And I maintain that pointing that out is a little more socially useful than shouting nigger all over the place. I think what really takes the biscuit, though, is this failure to address the 50-foot elephant in the room. What happens if we refuse this request? Will you cartoon us in return, or will representatives of your religion go utterly postal? Which is the greater violation of liberalism, Mohammed, seeing as how you're such the expert? The cartoons or the reaction to the cartoons? What would John Stuart Mill make of machine gunning journalists? Because I have to tell you, if you want more respect from society for your religion, then it would help if the exponents of that religion stopped making Lord Voldemort look like a bit of a grump.
I used to go out and do these racial jokes. I'd say French, you know, why do the French have so many civil wars so they can win one now and again? Why are Australians so well balanced? Because they have a chip on each shoulder, you know. I used to do these jokes, and then I say, and there were these two Mexicans, and the whole place would go, oh.
Right.
I want to say, what you make jokes about Swedes and Germans and French and English and Canadians and Americans. Why can't we make jokes about Mexicans? Is it because they're so feeble that they can't look after themselves? You see, it's very, very condescending then. You know? Well, why is it? Who are the people you can't make jokes about?
Muslims.
Muslim?
Yeah. Try that.
Yeah, but that's...
See what your Twitter feed says.
Yes. Yeah, but that's not saying that you can't. That just means that they'll kill you.
Fuck
right?
them. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I've said that.
Theoretically, you could.
You know, I've made jokes like, you know, it's a religion of peace. There's a PC over there, there's a PC over there. And see, they're they're pretending to laugh now, but you can tell their first instinct was, oh, no, you didn't, you know.
Oh, dear. I think it's terribly important. But the problem is, if you make jokes about people who are going to kill you, there is a sort of a tendency to hold back a little, isn't there?
Yeah.
And this links to another precept, which is really interesting, called the tyranny of the majority. Now, in democracies, one of the things that most democratic commentators said was a problem.
Democratic commentators. He talks about civilization like someone who's just beamed in from outer space, popped to the library, and checked out the Idiot's Guide to the West. But his copy had half the pages missing, do you know what I mean? I cannot stand people like this. I cannot stand people who have taken an introductory class in European thought and then parade around like Plato, lecturing us about philosophy that they clearly haven't read, and approach it not honestly, trying to understand it, but with the attitude of, oh, how can I poke holes in this? How can I reinforce my beliefs? How can I promote my tribe? Go on, Mohammed. Tell us about what democratic commentators have said that means you were right all along, buddy. Go on.
One of the things that most democratic commentators said was a problem was what is referred to as a tyranny of the majority. When you have a majority of people that believe in one thing and a minority of people that believe in something else, and those majority of people actually exploit somehow or take advantage of the minority of people, and that could take different forms. And in our discussion today, we could say actually it does take the form of insulting or saying something which would be insulting to a segment of people, which in this case would be Muslims.
It doesn't understand the tyranny of the majority principle. Imagine my surprise. I'm sat here. I tell you what, someone do me a favour. Go through the video and timestamp the moments where he makes any sense at all. Please. And I'm not talking about grammatical sense here. He doesn't get a point for pronouncing majority correctly. I'm talking about areas where he actually demonstrates an understanding of a topic that he's talking about, because I'm really struggling here. That principle concerns guaranteeing the same rights to minorities as to everybody else, which we do. We haven't banned the Quran, have we? We don't kick you off YouTube. We don't stop you protesting or drawing your own cartoons saying Charlie Hebdo is shit. We don't care. Fill your boots.
What media streams have to understand, if they want to be democratically consistent, is that actually what they should be doing is amplifying the voices of the minority in order to create an equilibrium. If what they're doing is counter to that and actually amplifying the voice of some segment of the majority, which is actually antithetical to the minority, that does anything but exacerbate the situation and create a higher exploitation for the minority, which is anti-democratic, if you think about it philosophically.
We have been amplifying them. Why do you think so many people are pissed off with your community? Do you think it's because we haven't been listening to you? Do you think it's because we haven't been paying attention to what you're getting up to around the world? The real question is, why are the media so keen to give people like you a platform and less keen to amplify the voices of the minority within your minority, the true liberals, who might actually have something interesting to say and set a good example for the rest of your community? That's what I'm asking.
So Joe Rogan, frankly, in his in his commentaries and with the people that he's brought on the bandwagon, frankly, with panelists, has been nothing but fueling a tyranny of the majority that I would claim is happening already in America and the West, and being, therefore, by extension, quite anti-democratic.
No, he's not. And I love this. Just look at Joe there, laughing at him in the background. It's beautiful. This guy is so desperate for attention. If you browse his channel, there's a bunch of these responses directly to Joe, and he's like, let me on the show. Come on, have me on the show. Let me on the show, Joe. If you don't, you're being anti-democratic. You're harming me. What absolute fucking nonsense.
If he wants to be consistent, and he wants to humanize he doesn't want to dehumanize human beings. He wants to allow human beings to celebrate the human dignity. Then what he should do is allow for the counterbalance, amplify the voices of the minority, even if you don't like it. Noam Chomsky said something really interesting. Noam Chomsky is a very famous liberal kind of thinker.
Is he? Yeah, that's how his Wikipedia page begins, isn't it? Noam Chomsky is a... how do we say this? He's very... he's famous, isn't he? Oh, yeah, he's very famous, yeah. Noam Chomsky is a very famous... Well, he's not right-wing. No, he's left-wing. He's a liberal. Yeah, he's a very famous liberal, and he thinker. He's a very famous liberal thinker. Yeah. Noam Chomsky. Very famous liberalthinker.com. Yeah, he's bought the trademark for that, hasn't he? Just get on with it.
I think he was one of the most quoted people in a certain time period, in certain publications and books.
Get on with it. Yes, get on with it.
He said, you don't really believe in freedom of speech until you allow the people you despise the most to say what they want to say.
Bring us on, Joe.
That's it.
That's it. Bring us on, Joe. Yeah, go ahead, finish.
That's what I was going to say.
Wait. What? You don't think that? That's a complete contradiction of the point you were making earlier. I agree with Chomsky. That's my position. You said we shouldn't publish cartoons or insult Muslims because it harms them. You can't believe what I believe and also the opposite of what I believe. Well, I mean, I suppose you can, technically, but then you're just an idiot. I'm sorry, but after all that, I was worried about him not making sense to me, but he doesn't even make sense to himself. Oh, sorry, folks, I've completely wasted your fucking time. Have a good week. Oh. Fucking hell.
finally, for the proposition, Christopher Hitchens.
The real question, or if you like, subtext question before us is this: is nothing sacred? What we've really been discussing is the old question of whether or not there is such an offence as blasphemy or profanity. And now, if I don't tell you exactly what I think about the simpering speeches that we heard from the other side, I'm not censoring myself. I'm just being polite and civil and saving some of your time. What I will not prevent myself from saying, or will not let anyone else prevent me from saying, is the following. It is wrong, and always has been, for churches, powerful, secular, human institutions, to claim exemption from criticism, which is what's really being asked here. If there's going to be respect, it has to be mutual. Does Islam respect my right to unbelief? Of course it does not. Does it respect the right of a Muslim to apostatize and change belief? Of course it does not. I have had to have, I can name now 4 or 5 friends, 6 or 8 maybe, if I have time, 5 or 6 of whom you would certainly have heard of, who have to live their lives under police protection for commenting on Islam, for having an opinion on it. And this is getting steadily worse all the time. And it's grotesque. Here is an enormous religion with gigantic power that claims that an archangel spoke to an illiterate peasant and brought him a final revelation that supersedes all others. It's a plagiarism by an epileptic of the worst bits of Judaism and Christianity. That's obvious, it seems to me. How long do you think I'm going to be able to say that anywhere I like? It would already be quite a risky thing to say in quite a lot of places. I did not come to the United States of America 25 years ago to learn how to keep my mouth shut. And I'm going to reject all offers that I change that policy, however simperingly they are put. Okay?